Welcome to Fairways to Heaven with your host, Christian author and PGA member John Decker. Join John as he discusses all things golf, including useful instructional techniques and tips from your swing to a better game strategy. John will also talk about the importance of his faith and how it relates to his life and golf. So if you're a Christian who loves the game of golf or wants to learn how to play it, then this is the show for you. Now, please welcome the host of Fairways to Heaven, John Decker.
Welcome to the Fairways to Heaven show. I'm your host, John Decker, and we are streaming live on Bold Brave TV. If you miss a show, please go to YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you stream your podcasts to download a show. Now, this show is designed to help you improve your golf game while glorifying God. So I invite you to go to my website, deckergolf.com. And on my website, you'll find my complete video library with videos including full swing, putting, chipping, pitching, bunker, golf fitness, and course management. You'll also find information on there about my books. I have written 2 books. My first book, Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game. It was published in 2016. And my second book, Fairways to Heaven, One Shot at a Time, and that book was published in July of last year. I also have information on the website about my Bible study. Now, I'm very excited because I now have 16 churches and groups who have participated or are currently participating in my Bible study. So if you have a group, a small group, and you want to have a Bible study that's based on golf, feel free to go to my website, deckergolf.com, and the information is on there. I'd love to send it out to you and participate with your group as well. And I also have information on there about speaking engagements. If you're looking for a public speaker, I'd love to come to your facility and meet you and speak to your group. Now, I'd like to welcome all of you who are watching the show live. For those of you who follow me on social media, on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, welcome to the show. Now, last week's show was show number 15, and it was the leading hips. And we talked about how the hips lead the downswing. We had 3 videos, and the first video was a drill to initiate the hips to lead the downswing. The second video was an exercise that's really helped me with my hip strength and flexibility. And the third video is an exercise that Scotty Scheffler uses for his thoracic spine mobility. It's really helped me out as well. Now, our special guest last week was Bill Williams, and Bill is a golf fitness specialist at the New Albany Country Club, and is also works at the Yoga Factory in Westerville, Ohio. And then in the final segment, I talked about allowing the Holy Spirit to lead your life. Now, if you've missed any of the first 15 shows, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, John Decker Golf Instruction, so you will be notified when a new show has been uploaded and never miss another episode. Now, today's show is coming to you live from Columbus, Ohio, where I'm currently teaching at the Medallion Club. I've been here since April, and I will be here through November. And then in December, I'll head back down to Florida and teach at the Dennis Meyer Golf School in Naples, Florida. So if you live in Ohio, if you live in Florida, you'd like to come see me personally, reach out to me on deckergolf.com. I'd love to meet you, love to work with you one-on-one. But if you live in different parts of the country or maybe around the world and you want to have some online instruction, if you go to deckergolf.com, all that information is on there as well. You can reach out to me and I can work with you online as well. Now, this show is designed to have audience participation. If you look on the screen, you'll notice our number. It's 1-866-451-1451. If you call in, I'll be glad to answer your question during the show. Or you can go to the live chat feature and you can type in a question. I'll do my best to get to it during the show. Or you can email me. My email information is on deckergolf.com. And if you email me, I will get to your question in a future show. Now, all of our shows have a theme, and today's theme is the low place. And in the first segment, I'm going to talk about the low areas on the golf course and the adjustments needed for uneven lies. And then in segment 2 and segment 3, I'm going to bring on my special guest, Brian Jones. Brian is the Director of Instruction at the Kenwood Country Club in Cincinnati, Ohio. And then in the final segment, I'm going to talk about inviting someone from the low place to a higher seat at the table. All of our shows have scripture, and today's scripture is from Luke chapter 14, verses 10 and 11. And again, all of my scripture comes from the New King James Version. But when you are invited, go and sit down in the lowest place, so that when he who invited you comes, he may say to you, "Friend, go up higher." Then you will have glory in the presence of those who sit at the table with you. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Now, since day one of this show, my pledge to you, the audience, is that this is a Christian golf show with a heavy emphasis on golf instruction. So let's get right into some golf instruction. Now, like I mentioned earlier, today's theme is the low place. And golf is played from the ground up. But most of you practice, when you do practice, is you're practicing on a driving range, and the driving range is very flat. So it's very difficult to work on uneven lies when you're on the driving range. Sometimes you have to go off to the sides. I'll take my students off to the sides to give them an uneven lie. But when you get out on the golf course, you've been practicing on a level lie, and then you get an uneven lie, and you don't know how to make the proper adjustment. So I thought today, since we're talking about the low place, there's a lot of low areas on the golf course, I would go over uneven lies. I have shot 4 videos on this. And the first video is off an uphill lie. So Caleb, let's go to video number 1, please. Hi, I'm John Decker, PGA golf instructor and author of the book, Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game. Many times when I get students who have a reverse pivot, in other words, their weight goes this left on their backswing and goes right on their downswing, I will put them on an uneven lie or an uphill lie like this. Because I'm on the uphill lie, it makes it very easy for me to get behind the ball. The only adjustments I make are in my setup. I tilt my shoulders with the slope and make my normal swing. Your ball is going to go higher. You're going to lose a little distance, so you're going to need to take a little extra club. Practice the uphill lie, and you're going to improve your game. So working on a uphill lie is a great way to learn how to get behind the golf ball. Again, if you have a reverse pivot, I highly recommend hitting off uphill lies. It's a great way to work with that. Now we're going to go to the second video, and this is where the ball is above your feet. If you're a slicer, this is going to be a great video for you to watch. So Caleb, let's go to video number 2, please. Hi, I'm John Decker, PGA golf instructor and author of the book, Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game. Today I want to work with you on an uneven lie where the ball is above your feet. This is going to tend to cause the ball to go to the left of when you hit it, and a lot of times you'll hit a draw or a hook off this lie. So the first adjustment I make is I tend to aim right of my target. The second adjustment I'll make is I'll stand farther from the ball because the ball is closer to my body. And then I'm going to make practice swings to make sure and feel the slope before I hit the shot, just like this. Work on the ball above your feet lie. You're going to learn to hit a draw off this lie. Work on it, and you're going to improve your game. The ball above my feet is one of my favorite lies in golf because I like to naturally draw the ball so it kind of fits my my game. So, but if you're struggling with learning how to hit a draw, practice off that, and always make practice swings. Your rehearsal swings are very important so that you're measuring yourself to the ground. Because remember, you're not on flat land anymore, so you've got to be able to make those adjustments. Now, the third video is where the ball is below your feet, and I can tell you at 6'4", this is one I struggle with the most, and I think most golfers do, because now the ball is farther away from my body. So, Caleb, let's go to video number 3, please. Hi, I'm John Decker, PGA instructor and author of the book, Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game. Today I'm going to work with you on the full swing. We're going to do an uneven lie where the ball is below our feet. Now, this is a lie on the golf course that is very difficult, and your club selection is one of the most critical things that you need to do here. What you have to understand is anytime the ball is below your feet, you are going to lose distance. So you need to take one extra club. So instead of hitting your 9-iron, hit your 8-iron. Go ahead and aim a little bit left of your target, make your normal swing, and the ball should have a little bit of a fade to it. I'm going to bend my knees a little more than normal and go ahead and make my normal swing. Take an extra club when the ball's below your feet, and you're definitely going to improve. Now, the last video that we have is the downhill lie, and this is a great way to work on your weight shift. If you're having trouble making a divot on the golf course, if you're losing power, a lot of times I will put my students on a downhill lie because gravity will allow them to shift down into their left side or their front side, when they're hitting their shot. So this is a great way to work on your weight shift. So Caleb, let's go to video number 4, please. Hi, I'm John Decker, PGA golf instructor and author of the book, Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game. If you need to work on your weight shift, an excellent way to do this is by hitting off a downhill lie. I'm going to go ahead and take my normal setup, tilt my shoulders with the slope, and swing down the hill. Practice off a downhill lie, and you're going to hit it a lot more solid. Again, for all of those uneven lies, all 4 of those videos, you need to make sure that your shoulders are with the slope. You're making plenty of rehearsal swings so that you can feel the ground, and then go ahead and make your normal golf swing. Now, and again, for those of you who are listening to the show and you want to watch these videos, please go to YouTube and subscribe to my channel, John Decker Golf Instruction, or you can go to deckergolf.com and you can see the videos as well. Well, it's time for our first break. And when we return, we're going to talk with our special guest, Brian Jones. I'm your host, John Decker. You're watching Fairways to Heaven. We'll be right back.
Mike Zorek, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Fairways to Heaven. I'm your host, John Decker, and now it's time to bring on today's special guest, Brian Jones. But before we bring Brian on, I want to tell you a little bit more about him. Brian is the Director of Instruction at the Kenwood Country Club in Cincinnati, Ohio. He is a member of the Southern Ohio PGA Hall of Fame. He is a Golf Digest Best Teachers of the State of Ohio, and he was in 2024 and 2025. And he has won numerous section awards, including the 2018 Teacher of the Year Award and also the 2008 Golf Professional of the Year Award. So, Brian, welcome to the Fairways to Heaven show.
Great, John. Great. Glad to be on here with you.
It's great to see you again. I got to see you here at the Medallion Club this past week. We played on Monday, and we had a little bit of rain to deal with, but we had a good time, and it was great seeing you.
Absolutely.
You have an amazing resume. You sent me your bio information, and I mean, I would have taken up a third of the show just announcing all of your awards and everything that you've won. So I tried to highlight the major ones, but all of them are important, and you've had just a great career. But let's talk about how you got into the game of golf. And then also let us know just what made you want to kind of go into the PGA and be a PGA member.
So it's funny. I started caddying when I was about 11 years old at a club down the street, Crest Hills Country Club, and was very fortunate to be around Bob and Gail Hauer, who's also a Hall of Fame member, great player, great instructor, still to this day. And I think he just turned 83 the other day. Wow. And so once I started caddying, no one in my family had ever played golf. Wasn't even on the radar. I think my grandfather said he played once and he hit a shot over the hill and almost hit some lady, and he decided that was the end of the golf and he never played again. So, I was fortunate when I worked there as caddy, and then they needed help in the bag room and picking up range balls and so forth. So I would caddy in the morning or late afternoon, and then work the rest of the day in the golf shop and picking range balls, cleaning carts, cleaning clubs, and just kind of worked my way up through. And as I was coming up through, just watching Bob taught a lot, and his wife Gail kind of helped run the golf shop, and just being around that environment, and just fell in love with the game, and decided even at an early age, this is what I want to do. I want to, at that point I had started playing probably about 14, just kind of messing around when we could play on Mondays as caddies. I had a set of golf clubs that were, I don't think I had one iron that matched another one, that I would just piecemeal from garage sales or wherever I could find them, or old clubs that they had laying around. And then, once I got into high school, or we didn't have a very strong high school golf team at the time, so they were looking for anybody who had clubs and knew what golf was to get on the team. And just progressively enjoyed it, and played a lot of other sports too, but I liked getting better at it. And Bob was real instrumental. He was always great to take some extra time to kind of work with us, and from there I just decided that this is what I wanted to do, and walked on at UC and played at the University of Cincinnati. And at that time I was fortunate because I could commute back and forth, still stay at home, travel with the team, but still also be able to work and play and practice at Crest Hills. And so after I graduated, matter of fact, on my graduation day from UC, I went and had my playability test that same day. So I played 36 holes, shot all the way down to UC for my commencement, which at that point was pretty good because I was sunburnt. So I matched the red and black pretty well to get my diploma. And from there, I got into the PGA program, went to the golf professional training program while I was there at Crest Hills. And then when Bob retired, I came over here to Kenwood for about 4 years. And then actually got my membership just about the time I started at Kenwood. And then after that, had a head professional and teaching and general manager job up at Hamilton Elks Golf Club for 9. And then I've been back here at Kenwood for over 13 years.
That's awesome. I mean, it's so many of the people that I've interviewed that are in the PGA. It's that love for the game when they're young, and it's just a passion to want to get out there on the golf course. And when you get in the business, 25 years, 30 years, and longer, sometimes you can kind of lose that. And I try to always remind myself of that passion. The whole reason I got into this game or this business, excuse me, was because of the game of golf. And so I think playing, getting out and playing just kind of revitalizes those juices. And I love hearing that. I love it hearing stories about people who have passion, for the game. But today's theme is the low place. And many young golfers, when I work with a lot of juniors, and I'm sure you see this as well, rely strictly on their 60-degree or lob wedge to hit all of their shots around the green. In your opinion, do you think that chipping is kind of a lost art? Because I think, kids are always trying to hit those high shots. What's your opinion on chipping? Do you do a lot of chipping, when you're working with students? Do you work on a lot of chipping with them? And if you do, kind of talk a little bit about what kind of techniques you use.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I've always been one and I tell this in my short game clinics to just a one-on-one student. A lot of times I tell them, I said, look, you want this ball on the ground as much as possible.
Mhm.
I said, because you get, and I'll put a ball maybe a couple feet off of the green, maybe on the fringe, and I look at them. I said, so what would you do from here? And they all look at me, and what do they all say? I would putt it. I said, well, why would you putt it? Well, because I know I can control it, and I can probably control direction, distance, and even just contact pretty well. I've rarely seen anyone really whiff a putt or hit one totally off the toe or off the heel. So then when I back them up, maybe even like 10 yards off the green, I said, well, so then why, when you get 10 feet back, are you going for that 56 degree and 60, and you're trying to get the ball so high in the air and be very precise with the contact? And they kind of have a dumbfounded look. They're like, yeah, why would I do that? So that's when we get into, hitting more, what I call it kind of putting with loft. People call it bump and run, whatever the case might be. But I want them to feel like, hey, you're taking this club, and by the adjustment you're making with it, getting the handle a little higher, choking up on it, getting it more underneath of you, little weight forward, and all you're making is the same putting stroke, and then changing the golf club based on how far you want it to roll out. That now all of a sudden they don't have to change technique as much. All they got to do is change clubs, just like they do when they're on the golf course. If they need a 7-iron, if it's uphill, I might need a 6-iron because I got to play for more distance or whatever the case might be. Then just educating them on how far those clubs can go and giving them kind of a baseline of where they go. And I think it's remarkable. And I've even had a lot of beginner ladies and stuff that I've taught that I've even taken a hybrid. I said, we're going to take this hybrid and we're going to use it like a putter. It's going to help get it up onto the fringe. But you know what? Now they can get the ball onto the green in one. And believe it or not, all of a sudden, sometimes they get pretty good with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you're teaching the different clubs, are you going down to like the 6-iron, 7-iron, 8-iron, or are you staying like 9-iron pitching wedge, gap wedge?
I go down to about a 7-iron when I do it. So yeah, I mean, I'll usually start them at a pitching wedge because a lot of times they never even think to use that to chip with.
Mm-hmm.
Then when they start to understand the technique a little bit, and they're going maybe a pin that's towards the middle of the green, it's like, okay, well, what if we had to go all the way there in the back? We had to go another 10 yards or 10 steps. What would a 9-iron do? Let's see what an 8-iron would do. We're still landing in the same place, but what we're doing is we're creating a more consistent and reliable shot pattern.
That's awesome. In my second book, I have a chipping ratio that I learned from Phil Rogers. He got it from Paul Runyon. So a 1-to-6 ratio of air time to roll time is going to be a 6-iron. 1-to-5 is a 7-iron. A 1-to-4 is an 8. A 1-to-3 ratio is a 9, and a 1-to-2 is a pitching wedge. So it gives you a gauge, of how far. Like you said, we all do this in the full swing. We have clubs for 100 yards, 120 yards, 140 yards. Why not do it in the short game? So I think chipping is something that's very important, and I try to emphasize that to all my students. I love the answer to that.
Yeah, I do the same.
Yeah. Go. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I do the same metrics, same thing, kind of 2-to-1
Yes.
ratios, and get them to understand. And sometimes I'll even take them and have them step them off. And I said, not that you got to do this when you're on the golf course, but if you're standing there knowing where you want to land it, then is that twice as far, 3 times as far, 4 times as far? And I said, it's almost telling you exactly what club you need to hit, and you're not guessing.
Absolutely. I love that. Now let's talk a little bit about the full swing. In the full swing, we hear about the low point of the iron and the low point of a driver. I was talking with Sarge about this when he came on the show earlier this year. Talk us through what you try to emphasize to your students about where the low point should be when they're hitting an iron shot versus a driver.
Yeah, so we're fortunate. Not all the time, but most of the time I have TrackMan up, so I'm able kind of to show them. There's a area on TrackMan that shows you where you're hitting, if you're hitting before or after. But more times than not, especially if I'm just out on a grass tee with no TrackMan, try to get them to understand, or I'll use a hula hoop and say, look, wherever your low point is here, I said, look what the club would be doing before and after this low point. I said, and I use the term hitting down with irons very loosely, because I don't want people out there feeling like they're trying to chop the head off a snake when they're coming down into an iron, right? I said, we're still trying to feel a sweeping motion. I said, but you're creating kind of that down based on getting your low point in the right spot. So one of my favorite drills that I like to do is I'll put a tee in the ground and put it pretty low to the ground, and I'll have them kind of just clip this tee.
Mm-hmm.
And I even do this when I'm doing like we were talking about with the low bump and runs or putting with loft. And I said, then what I want you to do, I said, now you've clipped the tee, so you're controlling the low point pretty well. I said, now I'm going to put the ball right behind the tee with having the tee towards the target. And I said, now all I want you to do is stand here. I said, don't even look at the ball. I want you to look at the tee. And then I want you to, go ahead and make a swing for me. Just try and clip the tee again. Next thing you know, they contacted the ball, then the tee, then they're taking maybe a little bit of turf. And all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, that felt totally different. Same thing with the driver. I'll tee it up with the driver. I'll put that tee on the ground. I say, okay, now take me some swings, try and clip that tee, and then clip the taller tee as you're coming through. Because now they're getting a better understanding of where that low point is and how they need to attack the ball. Because a lot of times, and I'm sure you get this, is, well, in a driver swing, a lot different than an iron swing. It's like, not really. It's more about where you're catching the golf ball.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a setup adjustment with the driver versus the iron, which it really produces a lot of, when you widen your stance and stand, get more behind the ball, you're going to hit naturally more up on the ball. When you narrow your stance and get your weight a little bit more centered over the ball, you're going to automatically kind of hit down on the ball a little bit more. So great answers there. So let's talk about mindset. I know that you are a very good player in our section. I know that you played collegiately. And I want to talk about going low and having that mindset. One of the things that I remember when I was playing in a tournament when I was in my early 30s, and I was 7 under par after 12 holes. And I was I don't know if I've ever been that low in that few holes in my life. I've been 7 under, but not after 12 holes. And I remember I felt like I was in like another planet. I was like, I'd never been there. And I think that it was something that kind of caught me off guard. I ended up shooting 68. I let some shots go toward the end of the round. But the mindset of being able to put that behind and go forward and continue making birdies and going lower. What are some tips that you have for those players out there that maybe are playing collegiately or playing high school golf and are trying to break barriers they've never got to? What kind of tips do you have for that?
So when I was growing up, working with Bob Hauer, and Bob used to always tell us, especially like, back then, and now I'm going to show my age, we didn't have a whole lot of places like simulators and stuff in the wintertime. So we had some downtime, right? Well, if we were fortunate somewhere to maybe find a heated range to go hit a few balls, but obviously you weren't out playing golf. And he'd tell us, he says, you know what, when the weather breaks and you start coming out playing, he goes, I want you to go all the way to the front tees. And I want you to play, because I don't care if you drive the greens or whatever. He says, if you're putting for eagles, that's great. If whatever the case is, but he says, I want you to go out there and see how low you can shoot. And he says, and then go back to the next set of tees. And he says, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Go out there and have 18 birdie putts and just see what happens, right? So where now all of a sudden, okay, I'm 1 under, okay, I'm 2 under, up, 8 eagle, and 4 under. whatever the case is, and now all of a sudden, right, you're like, you get used to being there,
Hmm.
I was fortunate for a while too to work with Tim Kramer, who's unfortunately no longer with us, who was really great at getting, understanding like your emotions and where you're at. And his biggest thing was, we all have this kind of space in life where we feel comfortable. And he goes, it's like when you're playing really bad, then all of a sudden you realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm better than this. Then you probably relax, you get more in your comfort zone, then you start playing better. Or, and like in your case, right, you're playing really good and you start thinking to yourself, wait a minute, am I really this good? And you find a way to kind of mess it up a little bit to get back to that
Yeah,
comfort zone. So, he always said, the more you keep getting out of that comfort zone, he says, and you get better at it, now all of a sudden you're going to be able to be much better in being, uncomfortable and uncomfortable or comfortable in uncomfortable situations. So
that's awesome.
that's what I've done with a lot of my juniors and stuff. It's like, 'cause, the way the kids hit it nowadays are all, we're going to the very back tees and
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah. I'm like,
yeah,
well, you know what? And Bobby even told us once, he says, you know what? If you can't go out and break the course record off of the front tees, or back then we called them the ladies tees or red tees. He
yeah,
says, he said, then obviously you need to work more in your game and keep working at it. So,
absolutely. That's a great way to learn how to score, and I love that. I've done that with some of my students. I actually got that idea from Bob Sowards. He does that with a lot of his students. But great stuff there. Well, Brian, we're coming up on our first break. So when we return, we're going to continue talking with our special guest, Brian Jones. I'm your host, John Decker. You're watching Fairways to Heaven. We'll be right back.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to Fairways to Heaven. I'm your host, John Decker, and we are talking with the Director of Instruction for the Kenwood Country Club, Brian Jones. Now, Brian, today the theme is the low place. So today I want to talk a little bit about green reading and walk us through, if you're working with a student and you're out on the golf course, do you take the student to the high areas or do you take them to the low areas to when they're reading a green?
Believe it or not, I take them kind of to both.
Mhm.
So a lot of times I'm having them look at it from, both sides and behind the hole, behind the ball, between the ball and the hole, and kind of, walking around it. Now, again, with we all know the right pace of play is always a big issue, but
Yeah.
also trying to educate them on, hey, these are things you can do even when you're just walking up to your ball before you even mark it. And to just kind of get in that habit of kind of circling it a little bit to understand, hey, where is my low point on this and where is that high point? I've also done a little bit with aim point,
Hmm.
and some people that might visually have a problem, maybe seeing it just having them stand kind of in the middle of their line and straddling the line to feel, okay, well, what are you feeling here? Then all of a sudden, sometimes that even helps them, you know, reaffirm maybe what they think they were seeing. And, the other one that I kind of give to them is like, well, if you don't feel anything, play it straight. Sometimes I feel
Yeah.
like we try to overread or we try to read things that aren't really there, or, you're in that flat spot or the green and all of a sudden, maybe about 10 feet over to the left, there's a big mound or hump and you're like, oh, it's got to keep running this way. It's not always necessarily the case, especially some of the greens that we play and here
Hmm.
at Kenwood.
Yeah, and I think when you're working with a student out on the golf course, as you approach the green, the best way to read a green is from about 150 yards out, because you can see the high areas, you can see the low areas. You have a perspective that you don't have when you're standing on the green. And I always use the analogy of a tree. I can look at a tree and look up at it and see the entire tree. But if I were to climb to the top of the tree, I can no longer see the tree. And so
Yeah.
when, perspective is important, and as you're approaching the greens, I'm always trying to emphasize that before you ever even walk on the green, that you've already identified, the high points and the low points. And I want all of my students, and I know for the listeners out there, it's important that you have a home field advantage on your golf course. You need to know every nook and cranny of the club that you play at, because you're not going to have that advantage when you go to other golf courses. So, really understanding how the architects are trying to move the water, the low areas where the lakes are and the ponds and the creeks, that's, they're typically trying to move the water in those directions. Those are some other things that you should be looking for. But I love the answer about, walking up into the high and low areas. Now, one of the lowest areas on the golf course is the bunker. And so how do you teach your students to control their divots when they're in the bunker?
So, a lot of times I will take my students before we even get into a bunker and kind of get them to understand even how to hit a high flop shot
Hmm.
and just how to get the handle lower to let the face naturally kind of want to open a little bit more. And getting them, and I learned this from James Seekman about, steeps and shallows. Getting that handle down where it's getting more shallow so that it affords you the ability to feel like you can work the club more up and down and get steep with it. I'm not a big proponent of, big wide open stands to your target line where, you feel like you're standing kind of open and then you're trying to swing down the line. I keep my students, pretty square because that's also
Hmm.
what they're used to doing. And it's
Yeah.
easier for them to feel like they can swing the club in front of them and not feel like they got to reroute the club a ton. So once we do that and we're hitting some of those higher shots and they start to feel more comfortable, we get into the bunker and a lot of times I'll take a dollar bill and I'll place it on the ground. And I'll say, put the ball on the face of the dollar bill. And I say, look, everybody always talks about it's important to hit a couple inches behind the ball. I said, but what people fail to talk about is making sure you get at least an inch or two after the golf ball. I say, because if you're trying to almost really feel like that low point is after that golf ball, that club's working down and through, getting all the sand underneath the ball. And if you can get that sand out and get that onto the green, you're going to get the ball out and onto the green. And so we might even take a few practice swings just trying to blast sand up onto the
Hmm.
green and paying attention. Okay, well, where are you hitting? More times than not, more of my players they're kind of either kind of middle or they're hanging back on their right side if they're a
Yeah.
right-handed player. And then I'm like, okay, so that just means what? If you're hitting 4 inches behind it and not two, that means what? Well, we got to get a lot more left. And as they're getting left too, what? Their shoulders are probably getting a little bit more tilted towards their lead side and not so level. And now the club can work up and down even easier to be able to get down and keep the club down working a lot longer and get their low point out in front.
Yeah, I think that it's important for everyone to understand that when you're hitting a bunker shot, the sand is carrying the ball out onto the green. So your ability to control the depth of your divot is going to determine how good a player you're ultimately going to be, because sometimes your ball is going to be sitting up on the sand. Well, if my ball is sitting up and I have a good lie, I don't need to hit a tremendous amount of sand. I have to hit some, but I don't need to, drive it, 2 or 3 inches into the sand. I can kind of come in shallower. If I've got a ball sitting down in the sand, then I've got to come in steeper because I've got to get, the club physically under the ball. So it's almost like the club is coming to a very abrupt stop because you're coming in so steeply when you get a fried egg or a
Yep.
plugged lie. So that is something, controlling depth of your divot is something I think that most people don't factor in when you're practicing. Try to give yourself some good lies, try to give yourself some bad lies, because they're not always going to be good, as we all know, on the golf course. In your bunker play, do you encourage your students to have kind of one wedge for everything, or do you encourage them to use multiple wedges depending on if they have long shots, long bunker shots, or short bunker shots?
Yeah, a lot of times I will, if it's a longer shot, I'll tell them, let's say, like in my case, I carry a 58 and a 54. If I've got a
Yeah,
longer bunker shot, more times than not, I'm probably going to use that 54. Because then I don't feel like I got to hit it so hard.
yeah,
And generally, if I got a long bunker shot, I've probably got the ability to let the ball run a little bit. So by
hmm,
taking something with a little less loft, the ball, it doesn't hit and stop so quickly. It hits and kind of releases back. So it kind of
yeah,
gets back into keeping the ball on the ground a little bit more and controlling it.
yeah,
The worst thing I think a player can do is if you got a really deep pin that's, say, it's really stuck in the back of the green, all of a sudden you're trying to blast a 60 or 58 degree, and you're trying to, or even a 56 sometimes, and you're trying to get it way back in there. Well, if you hit it just a little too far, now you're over the green. Now you're short sighted, and
yeah,
and who knows what's looming behind there. Versus, what, if you're trying to hit it and chase it back in there a little bit better, yeah, it might not get all the way back to the hole, but you know what, you're on the green and you got an opportunity to make a putt. So yeah, I do try to get them to understand and use both of them. And to be honest with you, I mean, a lot of the students too, you know, if even if they have lob wedges, I'm trying to get them really good with maybe a 56 or just a regular
yeah,
sand wedge, and then show them the benefit of, okay, now you have a shorter shot and you happen to carry a 58 or a 60. That's fine, because now you can hit those shorter shots a little easier and take a little fuller swing, but you can be just as good, in my opinion, with a 56.
yeah. Tiger pretty much hits all of his bunker shots with a 56, and I heard him say in an interview they swear he didn't have a 60 growing up. He just learned how to dial it open and
Yeah.
work it, that way, and so he didn't want to change. I think he uses the 60 more for pitching versus the bunker shot. So that's a very good point. And for those of you who are maybe a little better players and you're hitting longer bunker shots, one of the things that I learned from Phil Rogers, and who was probably one of the greatest bunker players to ever play the game, is you can blast the ball 1/3 of the distance that you can hit your club off the fairway. So if you take whatever club you hit 100 yards, let's say it's your pitching wedge, that means you can blast it 30 yards. Or if it's your gap wedge, you can blast it 30 yards. So that 1/3 ratio, and I've done the math, I've practiced that and hit it. And I was like, it's pretty close. It's not exact. And obviously, if you skull it or something like that, that's not going to count. It has to be a good bunker shot. But the idea is that you're making the same swing, whether you're 10 yards from the hole or 40 yards from the hole, you're making the same swing. You're just changing clubs. That's the easiest way, in my opinion, to hit longer bunker shots, which, as you know, that's the most difficult shot, I think, in golf, is the long bunker
Well, and
shot.
I'm not sure what club it was last year at the U.S. Open on 18 that
Oh,
DeChambeau hit, but I guarantee it was not a 60-degree wedge.
no, that's the under pressure. I think that's one of the top 3 shots I've ever seen in my life,
Yeah,
because I thought for sure they were going to go to a playoff. I was like, he's not going to get that up and down, and
yeah.
that was an incredible bunker shot, and he's phenomenal. He's a really good bunker player. So, Brian, I know that you are very active in our section, and I know that you're very active with the PGA Hope Foundation. So, for those listeners who don't know that, what PGA Hope is, explain what the PGA Hope Foundation is, your role in the program, and how it benefits veterans.
Yeah, so I was fortunate back in 2016 to when we started PGA Hope, Matt Starr started a class over at Meadowlinks. So he needed some instructors. So I went through the certification, which is a one-day certification. We have 4 national instructors that basically come in and teach you how to deal with veterans with PTSD, or lost limbs, can't hear, can't see, whatever problem they might have. And so from there, I started every year working with Matt and his team over there. And basically, the HOPE program it stands for Helping Our Patriots Everywhere.
Hmm.
And we're the only organization that has a what's called an MOU with the VA, to where they actually can prescribe our programs as therapeutic.
Wow.
And the big thing with it is it gets the veterans out into the community, gets them around other veterans, and gets them exposed to the game of golf. Gets them outside, whether they're good at it, they've played it before, never played it, or they're absolutely new to the game. It exposes them to the community of just getting out. So I was fortunate enough when I was on the national board that we put together a committee, national committee, and they asked me to be a co-chair of that committee because they knew how involved I was here locally in Southern Ohio. So for 4 years I was co-chair, and I'm still on the national committee because my time kind of rolled off. But in that program, we've even taken it even a step further to, well, now we have what's called the Secretary's Cup, which actually Matt had 4 female veterans that played with him, and it's always at the PGA Championship the Monday before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually about 12 teams from around the country that compete. And again, it's more therapeutic. They're hitting tee shots on the first tee. We're announcing them just like if they're at the PGA Championship, and they're having to hit this shot in front of all these people. And as a therapeutic piece of this, because as golf pros, we always came in and said, we could have like 24 teams do a shotgun. Everybody get it done at the same time. And Chris Nowak, who's our veteran liaison, who's really helped us a lot in this, has said, no, we're going to keep it tee times, because if we can have a veteran stand up in front of 50, 100 people, I don't care what it is, and hit this tee shot, don't you think that they might even have a much better opportunity getting out and going to the grocery store, or just being able to get out of their house? So it's little things like that we see even, locally in the program, nationally in the program. We have also another thing that we do, PGA Hope and Wellness Week, which runs an entire week up at Congressional, that we take 20 vets. We call them our ambassadors. We help train them and give them the tools to help bring more veterans to the program and to talk it up. Bert Jones is one of the ones in Kevin Hanna that we have here in town locally. We had Nick that was with us, but unfortunately he had to move because of personal reasons to Oregon. But they become a little bit more of our boots on the ground with it. Yeah. And I mean, I will tell you personally, I got to do a lot of cool things when I was on the national board of the PGA. PGA Hope's always had a special place in my heart. But when you stand there and you help a veteran and they look at you, and I had a gentleman probably 2 years into it that walked up to me and looked at me and said, you know what? I was going to come to this stupid golf class, or I was going to eat this bullet. And he pulls a bullet out of his pocket. And he goes, I'm really glad I came to this class. So awesome. It's one of those things that and I think even as instructors, even just day to day, sometimes I don't feel like we don't realize how we impact people's lives. But I can tell you this program saves lives. And
that's awesome.
I'll do it as long as I can walk.
That's awesome, Brian. Well, thank you very much for coming on today's show. I know you're a busy man. You did a great job, but we're out of time. But thanks again for coming on the show.
Great. I appreciate it. Thanks for everything.
All right. Well, it's time for our final break. And when we return, I want to talk about inviting someone from the low place to a higher seat at the table. You're watching Fairways to Heaven. I'm your host, John Decker. We'll be right back.
Mike Zorek, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to the Fairways to Heaven show on Bold Brave TV. I'm your host, John Decker, and a special thanks to Brian Jones for coming on today's show. He did a fantastic job. Now I want to talk to you about inviting someone from the low place to a higher seat at the table. During my recent reading of the Gospel of Luke in chapter 14, I read about what Jesus describes as the lowly place. Now, during Jesus' time, where you sat at a wedding or dinner party was a reflection of where you stood in society. The people who sat close to the host were higher on the social ladder than those that sat at the end of the table or maybe at the back of the room. In Luke chapter 14, Jesus states that when you are invited to a wedding, do not sit at the best place. That way, if someone who is more honorable comes in after you, the host may ask you to move down and you will be put to shame. In Luke chapter 14, verses 10 and 11, Jesus states, "But when you are invited, go and sit down in the lowest place, so that when he who invited you comes, he may say to you, 'Friend, go up higher.' Then you will have glory in the presence of those who sit at the table with you. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted." Jesus later states in Luke chapter 14, verses 12 and 14, "When you give a dinner or supper, do not ask your friends, your brothers, your relatives, nor rich neighbors, lest they also invite you back and you be repaid. But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you shall be repaid at the resurrection of the just." Simply put, give to someone who can never give back to you. Now, when I read this parable last week, I was reminded of a poem that I used in the epilogue of my second book, Fairways to Heaven, One Shot at a Time. In 2018, I was pulling up to a stoplight and I saw a homeless man. And I gave him some money, and suddenly God downloaded a poem into my mind. I drove home immediately and I wrote the poem titled "Somewhere in Between." Now, the words for the poem were the first words I wrote for my second book, before I even knew I was going to write a second book. The poem, ironically, what became the last words of the book. God has given me gave me the last words first and the first words last. And here is the poem God gave me that day. Somewhere in between. Cruising to the red light, I caught a glimpse of a man holding a cardboard sign. His face revealed a life, I'm sure, that was quite different than mine. Our eyes never met, but I'm willing to bet he saw me from afar. The light glaring red, guilt riding shotgun. Where's the change I keep in the car? Our eyes now meet, the transaction's complete, and I sped away to pray. Thank God for the warm bed where I lay my head to sleep my problems away. I struggle with my current state, my destination, comparing my life to the Joneses down the street, while the homeless carry their lives on their shoulders that are transported by 2 weary feet. Father, I am not rich, nor am I poor, and there's places I've never seen. I live no life of luxury, but I'm grateful, thankful, and content living life somewhere in between. Jesus' parable from the Gospel of Luke and the words that God gave me years ago in writing this poem remind me of one thing. In life, we are to be the host at the table. We are to go to the low place and find that person who may seem to be out of place, down on their luck, or simply having a bad day. Does it have to be financial help? Maybe. But sometimes the invitation to someone to sit at the higher place at the table may be all the encouragement they need to get through that day. Well, once again, we've come to the 18th hole of today's episode. Thank you for watching the Fairways to Heaven show on Bowl Brave TV. We'll see you next week when once again we glorify God through the game of golf, one show at a time. Until next time, I'm your host, John Decker. God bless.
This has been Fairways to Heaven with host John Decker. Tune in each week for the very best in the game of golf, including fundamentals and solid game advice that John will share for a better and more satisfying game. Wednesdays, 9 a.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network, powered by B2 Studios.